Hi folks, Astronomy Live here. Going to be doing some live testing of SatTraker here in just a minute. Alright, now I think we can get down to business here. Let's see what satellites are currently available overhead. See here. Oh, thanks, Elvis. Yeah, the space station tracking was particularly nice, wasn't it? This software did a really good job on that. So tonight, I'm going to be tracking with a totally different mount. The space station tracking I did was with the LX200 Classic. This is going to be with a Nexstar SE mount. I don't even really have a camera or a telescope on there, just the camera. But I'm just going to be testing the mount and verifying that it does indeed work. This is using the ASCOM compatibility feature of this software. So I'm going to test the ASCOM feature and do some satellite tracking for the first time tonight with that. I tried to do some over the weekend, but the weather really messed things up. So what do we got here? There's a satellite that'll be overhead in a few minutes. It's actually rising right now. Oh wait, that's oh, wrong time. Okay, how about this one? Let's see here. Okay, this one's a good one. It's overhead right now. Not sure if I'll be able to get it in time. It's worth a shot. See if I can load in those elements real quick. Select the TLE file. Connect to the scope. Celestron. Make sure I've got the right properties. If I don't make this one, we'll just find another one. There's plenty of satellites up at the moment. This is going to be... That's good enough. Okay.
Acquiring object.
Here we go. Now let's see if we find it. Come on, go, go, go. The next star mount's not as quick as my LX200, unfortunately.
Object acquired.
It's got to play catch up now. There we are. Oh, that's a faint one. You guys see it there? It's way up there. If I click on it, though, it does a pretty good job of centering it up in that red box. Very nice. Very nice. This is the very first satellite I've actually tracked with this mount successfully, without it going into a cloud 2 seconds after I started trying. The next star mount talks, not my software. Full disclosure. Ooh! Did you guys see that? That was a meteor. We caught a meteor going through. Oh, oh. I had a little bit of an interference from a star there. Oh. Some interference, and we're going down into the trees now. It's getting down to the noise level of the camera. Okay, we'll stop tracking on that one. Alright. Now, let's go find another satellite. That was nice. Wasn't expecting that. We got a nice meteor going through the view. Isn't there a meteor shower going on around now? What's the closest meteor shower? Leonids, Taurids, something like that. So I guess that was the previous weekend, last weekend, but we still might be getting some meteors from those showers left over. Okay, cool. Let's see what else we got. Let's see. I want to find something that goes real high, preferably somewhat bright. We have Ariane rocket debris. That'll be rising in, well, now. Okay, perfect. Let me grab the orbit for this. So what I'm doing is I'm actually going to heavensabove.com, heavens-above.com, and just seeing what satellites are currently above my head for my location right now. At the moment, my software doesn't have any predictive capabilities in terms of trying to plan your observations. It'll tell you where the satellite is right now, but at the moment it's not designed to schedule your observations for you. You need to already know what you plan to observe and when it'll be over your head. Those are all creature comforts that I would like to add at some point, but they're not in the program yet. Those are lower priorities, of course, than the main features of satellite tracking, and just making sure that that's all working okay. Okay. So, and you'll notice the terminal I've got open is displaying some diagnostic information. Sometimes you get like divide by zero type errors with the math. The trigonometric functions tend to wig out a little bit when you get down to 0 degrees difference between the predicted position or detected position of the satellite and the current position of the telescope. And it says unable to track this frame. Well, actually, the unable to track this frame, that usually means that that's actually diagnostic to the frame itself. It didn't detect the satellite in the frame. When we got down to the end of that pass, for instance, the satellite got really dim, and it was difficult for the software to detect it. I was actually impressed it detected it at the start of that pass, because it was already a dim satellite. Okay, enough jabbering. Let's get on to the next satellite.
Acquiring object.
So it's still low, it's rising. It's going to be down in the trees somewhere. In the bushes, even.
Object acquired.
Okay, it's right at my roof line. Obviously. Okay. So what it does, software-wise, is when you tell it to start tracking an object, when you are on ASCOM, the software acts a little bit differently than when you're on an LX200 protocol. Because basically the software APIs work differently. With LX200, there is no way for me to tell the LX200 Classic what rate to turn the drives at. So I have to create my own control loop, basically, using the telescope's go-to capability. With ASCOM, I'm using the move axis method, which allows me to directly tell the telescope what speed to turn the drives at. And so it's a different control loop, totally different, really. It's all based on the vector of the satellite, the expected velocity of the satellite, the expected position of the satellite. What it does when you start tracking with ASCOM is it first performs a slew to the current coordinates of the satellite, but of course, by the time it gets there, the satellite will have already moved on. But what it does is, once it arrives there, that's when the NextStar software says, object acquired. That just means the go-to was completed. What it does then is it looks and says, okay, how far has the satellite moved since I started slewing? Where is it right now? And it applies a corrective factor. It basically does vector addition to the satellite's expected vector of motion, and it adds on a corrective factor that is to scale with the degree to which the satellite has already moved on to a new location, so that it'll speedily catch up. And then now it's tracking based on the expected orbit. It's trying to maintain a low difference between the current position of the telescope and the predicted position of the satellite. That's what diff as, diff out mean. And then the next two numbers are as rate, out rate. That just gives me a readout of the current rate in degrees per second that it's turning each of the drives. And yes, it now works with EQ mounts. Particularly useful for ASCOM. Now, I haven't tested that yet. That's something I'll test later tonight, hopefully, if I have time. I'm going to try to polar align this mount. And then see if it still works. It looks like the satellite is there behind the trees. As soon as it comes out, this looks like a bright one. It should be easy to track on. You can also change the region of interest size with the mouse wheel. I know I mentioned that before, but that's true of ASCOM as well. When you're doing feature-based tracking, you don't want a huge region of interest like this. The bigger the region of interest, the more processing power it'll require. When doing brightness tracking, it doesn't have any real impact on the processing power required, but it does have an impact in terms of you don't want to get a whole bunch of other random stars through the view that might confuse it. So this is a pretty big region of interest for brightness tracking, but the flip side of that coin is if the telescope's moving very quickly to catch up to the satellite, if the satellite moves more in one frame than the width of your region of interest, it will lose the lock. Okay? That's how that works. So you want the region of interest to be big enough that you're not going to risk losing the lock. But there's a problem, you see. You get another star in the view, it gets that confused for the actual satellite sometimes. So what you can do is just right-click to undesignate the target, and then left-click on the satellite again, and you're back on it. No problem. So you do have to babysit it for dimmer satellites like this. It's actually a relatively bright satellite, but it's of about the same magnitude as most bright stars, as you can see. And so the software, when doing brightness-based tracking, has no way of knowing the difference there. And so it will just happily lock on to another star of similar brightness. If you're doing tracking of, say, the International Space Station, it's going to be brighter than just about any star else you see in the background. You're not going to see any stars of similar magnitude in there. And you can generally set your camera to a fairly fast exposure where it will only pick up the station. And so in that case, it will it'll lock on just fine. So get some azimuth difference there. I'm not sure why it's not. That's weird. Let me try re-zooming on that target. The azimuth difference is increasing. That's weird. I have to check my source code here, see if there's a glitch somewhere. Sure seems like there is. It's moving pretty fast in azimuth now to try to keep up as the satellite approaches almost the zenith. And now the scope's maxing out its drive rates. It can't actually move any faster than this. So it can't keep up with the satellite at this point. So go back to orbit-based tracking. And hopefully you catch it on the opposite side. It's doing the best it can at the moment, though, trying to keep up. So, here we go. Here it is on the opposite side of the zenith. Oop. See there, it moved too fast. It left the region of interest. It lost lock. So we're back on it now. But I do want to check the azimuth corrections because it seems like it's not responding quite as it should in azimuth. Which is a little weird. It could be that the mount was just already struggling to keep up. This mount, as I said, it's not as fast as the LX200. It's about half the speed. You can also move the red box. That's telling the software where you want it to put the satellite in the view. So you want to co-locate that with the main telescope image. See, it's locking onto another bright star there. Okay, so if you want to move the red box, you can actually use the arrow keys on your keyboard and move it over 1 pixel at a time, and it'll drag the satellite that direction, as you see. So actually, it's correcting in azimuth pretty well here. It may not have been a glitch. It may have just been the mount not responding as it should have. So yeah, I can move the red box, and it brings the satellite wherever I move that red box. Come over here, come over here, come over here, come over here. And it does so just fine. Oh. I don't know why my camera freaked out like that. I don't know if I'm pinching a cable here. I don't think I am. It's fine. Okay, so let's stop tracking. We're going into the trees. That's good enough right there. Hey, there comes a plane. So, for astrophotography, if you just want to get the moon, planetary camera is all you need. For starting out, like what I use is the Samsung SDC 435, which is now sold as an SCB 2000, I believe. And it's a pretty fine little camera. It can actually do a pretty good job on the moon. But you'll need an adapter. I use a C-mount to T-thread adapter, and then I have a T-thread to 1 1/4 inch adapter nose piece that I use with it. There are other adapters as well. You can go directly from C-mount to 1 1/4 inch nose piece, I believe. I think there's some out there on eBay or whatever you can search for. 3D printed parts, things like that. Okay, let's see what else is out there. It's not the best camera for planetary for sure, but it does a pretty decent job. If you want to get fancy, there's I think DMK. I don't know. I always forget the names. There used to be these cameras called Lynx. I don't know if those are still a thing. I haven't kept up with the planetary imaging scene lately, so I don't know what the new hotness is, but this is definitely not a high-end planetary camera, but it's capable enough for my needs. Let's see, we're at 7-Eleven. There's an Atlas Centaur. Oh, I kind of want to get that. That's fun. It's overhead. It's at its peak right now. This is an old Atlas Centaur stage launched in 2003. Let me select that. Centaur, open that file. Start tracking.
Object.
There it goes. It's a long slew. It's on the opposite side of the sky. It's going to have a lot of catching up to do, unfortunately. Because it's still slewing to the position it was at when I pressed that button like a minute ago. Yeah. Come on, hurry up. Get on with it.
Object acquired.
Yeah, not quite. We got some serious catch-up to do. Go get it. Ah, here we are. There it is. Atlas Centaur. Sweet. So, yeah, as I said, I don't even have the telescope on the mount, actually. I just have the camera by itself on the mount. So no telescopic views tonight. At least not of these satellites. I don't have a way of mounting the camera to the next star scope right now. At least not piggyback on top of the telescope like it should be for satellite tracking. So I've just opted to forego the telescope altogether and track the satellite directly on the mount, just to test the mount's capability. Seems to be working quite well. And as I said, if you need correction, you can always manually correct with the arrow keys to move the red box where it will place the satellite. So if it's not quite placing in the middle of the red box, you can do your own corrections with it. And now we're getting into the trees again. Stop. Alright, that was the Atlas Centaur. Old space debris, basically. An old upper stage of a rocket that put a payload into orbit in 2003. Ah, yeah, Dazza did a moon video in 4K. It was probably with his what does he have, a P900 or a P1000? He's got one of those Nikon cameras now, I think, which are pretty good cameras, but they're not ideal if you want to mount them to a telescope. If you want to be looking for your telescope, you probably want an SLR or something if you want high-resolution video. The thing about planetary imaging, if you're trying to get a planet, it's very small. It's only going to take up a small portion of the chip. You don't need all of those pixels. You don't need 4K, because you're probably not going to have a telescope that can utilize the full 4K resolution anyway. What you want is a good sensitive camera that can use a fast exposure on the planets to freeze the atmospheric seeing, the turbulence in the air, and get a high-quality picture. Quality over number of pixels really matters. Let's see, we've got a lacrosse spy sat. It's not going to get very high. And we've got more meteor rocket debris. It's going from south to west. That's perfect. And that's rising right about now. Okay, let's go for that. And a Curiosity. This was launched from Russia in 1971. It's probably another rocket spent stage from the look of it. Okay. Let's load that orbital file. Yeah, I think it was a P1000 that DASA has. Which is a nice, really nice handheld camera. I've been impressed with some of the images I've seen coming from that thing. But if you're trying to image through a telescope, it's definitely not ideal.
Acquiring object.
So, doing that initial slew to an object, it works a lot better, of course, when the object is low on the horizon, and the angular speed of it is significantly lower
Object acquired.
and slower. See, now it doesn't have as much catch-up to do. You can wait for it to come out of the trees. Yeah, and it doesn't really, to answer your strange palm, it doesn't really time how long it took to do the slew. It doesn't need to. It just looks again at the satellite's current position when it gets there, when it finishes the slew, and it says, okay, here's how much catch-up I have to do. And then it adds that corrective factor on the angular rate that it turns the drives up to the maximum rate that the drives report that they can turn at. That's actually the first thing it checks when you connect the telescope. It asks the drives, how fast can you turn? And it makes sure it never tells it a velocity faster than that, because that will actually result in an ASCOM error and crash the program. So it does that sanity check first, basically, to make sure it never asks more of the telescope than it can do. But this also means that if you have a fast-moving satellite, especially if it's traveling close to the zenith and you're tracking an ALTAS, ALTAS has the advantage of reducing the vibrations for most mounts like this that are designed to be capable of ALTAS, but it has the disadvantage that you can get up to some really high speeds when dealing with objects near the zenith, and so it will simply not be able to keep up at those times, and there's nothing it can do about that, really. How bright is this object supposed to get up to? 4.2 magnitude. It should be that's gonna be fairly faint. It's gonna be a fairly faint one, and right now it's at the limit of naked eye brightness. There's a lot of moonlight out tonight. We've got practically a full moon. Looks like it's we got a little more waxing to do on it, but it's a very, very full moon, and as a result there's a lot of sky brightness. Looks like the satellite might be right here. Pretty sure that's it, but yeah, that's it, but it's really faint, and it's going to be really hard. Yeah, that's really difficult, if not impossible, for the program to detect at the moment. It'll get a little brighter as it gets higher. It's really tricky. It automatically tries to calibrate to the background brightness and the maximum brightness it detects in the image, but there is a certain noise level there that you have to exceed. It's really having a tough time. There we go. Now we got a solid lock. It's still jittery, as you can see, but it gets it. It does get it. And as it gets brighter, it's actually good to recalibrate that value, because see, now it's not picking up as much noise. It's not quite as jittery as it was. So it's good to reset that occasionally. Yeah, I just showed a Centaur upper a moment ago, heat shield. It was from 2003. I think it was from Vandenberg, if I remember right. This one's a meteor from 1971. So again, if you notice that it's not quite centering it up in the red box and you want it to move over, you can always issue manual corrections to sort of adjust for that using the arrow keys. Pretty simple. So we'll see how that goes. Alright, well, as you can see, as it approaches the zenith there, it has a lot of trouble keeping up. So, only so much you can do there, but I might play around with the code a little bit, see if I can make it a little more aggressive in trying to keep up there. It didn't seem like it was quite maxing out the drives before it started to lag behind a bit there. So, I might play around with it a bit. What I need to do is I need to get backup power for my laptop, so I'll be right back. Okay, that was close. Almost ran out of power on the laptop there. I had to pull the laptop plug out of the power strip because this next star mount actually takes up a lot more space on my power strip than my LX200 does, which is kind of odd. It's just how it's designed, though. Okay, so I had to grab another extension cord for the laptop. Alright, with that issue resolved, let's take a look here. ISS will actually be coming up briefly in about 13 minutes, but only for a couple minutes, and it's only going to get 17 degrees high, so I don't even know if it'll clear the trees. We'll try to look at it briefly anyway. It's, again, no telescope tonight, just the wide field camera, but it'll be fun to try anyway. Let's see, what do we at here? 726. I'd like to find something that's going to get relatively bright-ish. Cosmos 371. We'll try this one. It's going to be another Russian satellite. This is launched from Russia in 1970. That.
Acquiring object.
And off we go. I think I see something moving there. Yep. There's our target. And it centers up. Nice. Yeah, Sam, it's gonna be a short pass from ISS tonight. Not really worth much, to be honest, but since I'm out anyway, I figure when it comes up, I'll try to track it. Like I said, I don't even know if it'll clear the trees, honestly. It might not. Yeah, satellite got, or the software got confused there for a moment. That's just something you have to keep an eye on with these dimmer satellites. With ISS, of course, it's so bright, that doesn't really tend to happen. Let me see. I'm going to go into the code here while that's tracking and just take a look. Okay, that's object follows false. Nope, that's not what I wanted. Object follows true. ASCOM. Here's where the magic happens. Asrate plus asdiff, outrate plus outdiff. I'm gonna have some fun with this and make it a little more aggressive. Oops, did I lock? I locked on. I could hear the motor stop. I didn't have the window up on my end, but I could hear the motor stop there. I realized I was locked onto a star or something. Where's our target? Is it back there? Yeah, it's back there. It got really dim, didn't it? It's having trouble locking onto it now. It's so dim. Yeah, that's really not something I can easily lock onto. Okay, we'll stop tracking that one for now. There it goes, very, very faintly through the view. Okay, so let me just change the code here. I'm gonna try to make the corrective factors a lot more aggressive and just see what that does. Let's apply a 5x multiplier to the corrections when it locks onto the target. Hopefully this doesn't result in massive, massive oscillations. Seems possible, but let's experiment and just see what happens. So I'm going to have to shut down the software now for the moment. Disconnect the scope, stop the camera. Exit save configuration. Program exited, that's fine. We'll just save this and re-execute. Okay, program's gonna recompile and reload. Nothing like a little bit of real-time debugging. Though I wouldn't call it a bug so much as just re-optimization. Let's make that window a whole lot bigger. That's better. Alright, let's connect to the scope. Scope's connected. Okay, let's go find something to track. We've got a few minutes still to the ISS pass, looks like. We've got satellite high overhead. Cosmos 332. It's going to be similarly dim, hopefully bright enough to track. So, by the way, happy Thanksgiving, everybody. Hope everyone has a nice Thanksgiving tomorrow. I should have a fair bit of time in the next few days to work on this software. I'm hoping to have a stable version to release as an executable file.
Acquiring object.
To release as an executable file here pretty soon. I also want to test the polar line tracking capability. Yeah, the polar line tracking capability, though.
Object acquired.
Yeah, catch up. Oh, it's back there. It's dim as can be. Yeah, it's too dim to track. Alright. Well, so much for that idea. That's a really dim one. Okay. What else we got? Anything else? Let's see, that one will be... It's not going to be any brighter, but at least it's still rising instead of setting. Let's give it a shot. Cosmos 1140. So, the way the software is set up right now, again, this is not ideal, but it's functional for the moment. It only reads the top orbit in the TLE file that you feed it. The very first orbit in that file is the one it reads off. So I'm just literally copy-pasting the orbit from heavensabove.com into a notepad.
Acquiring object.
And saving it as a new text file, and then loading that text file. It's just an easy way to hop between satellites right now.
Object acquired.
Do we even have anything here? I'm looking, I'm not seeing much. I don't even really see this one. It might be too dim. Okay. No, that wasn't anything. I wasn't even trying to lock onto that, but no. Don't really have so much on this one. Okay, while it continues to try to track that, I'm going to look around here. Let's see, what else we got? We don't have a whole lot left. course, ISS is the brightest thing left, but it's not going to get very high. Yeah, there might have been something there. I see it. Yeah, I see it now. Oh my goodness, that's really dim. Pfft, yeah, I can't get a solid walk on that. Forget it. Too dim, too dim. Okay, stop the drives. Okay, let's see. We've got just a few minutes till ISS. There's nothing else at that sort of brightness for the next couple of minutes. We have a NOS satellite towards the end of the hour. We have 2 NOS satellites that'll be flying in formation pretty close to each other. That would be fun. We'll get that. They're Navy satellites that fly in formation. But for now, don't have a whole lot else going on. Might as well get ready for ISS here, because that's going to be a real short one. It's technically coming up over the horizon right now. I'm going to grab the orbit, feed it into the software, and just see what we get. Really, right now, I just want to see if this change induces an oscillation where it overshoots the target and then keeps self-correcting. Okay, let's load that.
Acquiring object.
Ooh, getting weird. Whoa. Yeah. I think, oh no, don't do that to me.
Object acquired.
Don't do it to me. I think I'm getting some weird short outs on my power cable to the video camera. This SCB 2000 or SDC 435 Samsung camera has a, you basically have to wire up the power yourself on this thing with a wall board, and so I've got a couple of stripped wires there that are screwed into the back of the camera, but it's that braided copper stuff that's not great, and I think it's fraying a bit and probably shorting out the camera. I may need some work on that. So I don't even know if ISS is going to get over the trees before it goes into Earth's shadow tonight. We shall see. So it will enter shadow at 7:41 and 6 seconds past the hour. That's less than 2 minutes from now. And I don't see nothing because I got palm trees in the way, as you can see. Come on. Come on. There we are. There we are. Whoa, 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 whoa. It overshot like crazy. I was worried about that. And it goes behind power pole. Come on. Come on. We got a minute left, maybe less. overshoots it real bad. Whoa, 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 whoa. Come back here. Okay, making it way more aggressive. Obviously, bad idea. Bad idea. Okay. Well, I know that answer now. Yeah, it's made it loopy. It's made it real loopy. And it's going into Earth's shadow now. Goodbye, ISS. See you later. Okay, so that answered that question. Alright. Connect, disconnect scopes, stop the camera. We may be able to get one more satellite in tonight, so I'm going to reset the software back to the way it was without that crazy aggression, which just causes it to lose its mind and overshoot the satellite every which way. It was better off before. Okay, connect scope. Strong. Connected. Also, just a side note, if you download the program, you can get it right now. The source code's on GitHub. It will save your configuration if you go to File, Exit, and Save Configuration. If you hit the X button up at the top right of the program, it will exit without saving the configuration. Just so you know. It'll remember what type of telescope you connected to, where the red box was, all that kind of stuff, the image scale, but only if you exit and save configuration. Okay, here's Nadezhda 3 rocket. As you might expect, this was launched from Russia in 1991. More rocket debris. Sensing a theme here. There's a lot of space junk up there, for sure. Okay, let's load that orbit.
Acquiring object. Object acquired.
Yeah, we had it on camera briefly, Sam. It wasn't something I could actually see much by eye. By the time it got out of the trees and the power pole and everything, it was already going into Earth's shadow. But I found that my correction to the software was a really bad idea. It does induce severe oscillations. It just overshoots like crazy. So I put it back to the way it was. Works better. Yeah, I live in Florida with, not with Red, but we live in the same state. Yeah, it's a hazy one tonight for sure. But if I can verify the software is back to its previous functionality, I may throw the telescope on there and just do some lunar observations here. But I do want to get the NOS satellites for sure. Those are rising in just a few minutes. In fact, 4 minutes is when they hit the horizon. They'll be going up to 81 degrees altitude, almost straight overhead, and then they'll go into Earth's shadow. So that'll be fun. For now, though, we're tracking old Soviet rocket debris. Would only accept 254. Don't remember what happened, but apparently it went crazy. I've done that before. I have done that before with an Arduino. Sent a servo motor an input that it couldn't accept, and it freaked out. Okay, are we coming up over the trees now? Hopefully this satellite will be bright enough to lock onto. No promises, though. It's been hit or miss tonight. Oh, here we go. There it is. That's going to be tricky. As it gets higher, it should get a little brighter here. Nope, nope, nope. Not that. Not that. It's my bad. Yeah, it's really tough to get a stable lock on that at the moment. Really, really tough. There we go. That's better. Come on. There we go. It's gonna get confused by those stars. Yep. Just reset it. Give it a go again. There we go. It's a little confused by the noise, and then it locks onto other stars. Might help in this case to set the region of interest a little smaller. As long as it doesn't completely shoot out of the region of interest. That's better. Oh, but we got another bright star coming in. Right for it. Ah, it locks onto that. Okay. Try again. Has trouble because also when it starts moving, that's an interesting phenomenon. When it starts moving, the brightness of the satellite, of course, decreases because it's smeared out over more pixels. And so if it's not a bright enough satellite and it's way off, you can get trouble. Get yourself in real dire straits. Yeah. Come on. There we go. Yeah, it's about as good a lock as I can get on this one. Try to reset it real quick. Nope, it decided to chase noise instead. Yeah, it's getting dim, I think. Okay. Alright, we'll stop tracking on that. Alright, so much for that one. Let's go to the NOS satellites now. I think they should be coming up. Yes. So this is NOS, that's going to be NOS 3-4. And flying next to it should be, okay, so it's NOS 3-4A and C. Don't ask me what happened to B, I don't know. Maybe there is a B that's not in the catalog, I don't know. But we're going to track on A and just see what happens.
Acquiring object.
Now, on another note, the software is currently compiled in 64-bit. I don't have Python 32-bit on my system with which to compile it in a 32-bit form,
Object
and
acquired.
this might result in trouble with drivers that are only 32-bit drivers if there's no 64-bit available. So that's something I'm going to look into this weekend as well, the potential of compiling versions of it in 32-bit as well, although I may not be able to do that as frequently as I compile in 64-bit. It seems like the Celestron driver, at least, has no trouble with the 64-bit program. So that's good. I think a lot of people probably have Celestron telescopes, and this is a universal Celestron ASCOM driver that it's doing all of this with right now. As long as your Celestron telescope has a hand controller that's version 1.6 or newer, it should work with my software. Really, if your scope was made anytime recently and it's Celestron, it probably will work, is kind of how to look at it. There's actually a list of some scopes that are expected to not work with it. If you look at the Celestron ASCOM README file, it will tell you the various kinds of scopes and the kinds of hand controller versions they have. The old Nexstar GT scopes, for example, have an older hand controller that will not work with this software. It should be less than version 1.6. But the SE Nexstars should all work. The CPC fork-mounted telescopes, those should work. A lot of the equatorial-mounted scopes, those should work. I haven't tested the equatorial tracking yet. That is something I intend to do. Obviously didn't have time to do that tonight, but another night I'll set it up from the start in polar alignment and see how it does with tracking. That's definitely something that's a priority for me right now for testing as far as basic functionality goes. Yeah, the acquiring object voice, that's the Nexstar software. That's Next Remote runs on my computer, and that's what the software is connecting to. The Next Remote runs the Nexstar mount, and that Celestron software is playing that voice every time I do a slew. It's not my software doing that, though it's my software causing it to do that. Alright, let's see some Navy satellites. Hopefully the view here will be wide enough that we can actually see them flying in formation. I think we're reaching the tops of the trees. What's the brightness of these things? Oh. Yeah, it's going to be real dim to begin with. It should get up to magnitude 3.7 by the time it enters shadow. That ought to be bright enough to track on. But it may still be too dim to detect at the moment. Let's see, what time does it go into shadow? 59 after the hour, so 5 more minutes, thereabouts. It's still quite low. So we got a few minutes here until it goes into Earth's shadow. Hopefully we'll get it before then. Oh, I start to see something. I do start to see something. It's real faint. I'm not going to be able to get a lock on it just yet. But there's something right here. Now the other one should be a couple seconds behind it, I think. Yeah, it's down here. So we got 2 satellites flying in formation. Another power line. You can see the car headlights on it as it went by. So we got 2 satellites, one here, one here. NOS A and it should be NOS A and C. These other dots are just hot pixels. You can see how, like this hot pixel right here, as that power line goes behind it, the hot pixel will be over it. So, yeah, as you can see, that's a defective pixel. It's not a real object. But this... Oh, noise. Come on. Pick it up. Pick it up. Pick up that satellite. Ah, it's real tough. Still a little too dim. Just for a moment. Nope. It's a star. Wait for it to go by this star here. There we go. Come on. Lock onto it. There you go. Excellent. Hooray. Alright. That's pretty good there. And then it locks onto a star. Okay, fine. Oh, stop locking onto that star. Now it's getting brighter. As you can see, as it gets higher, it gets brighter. It gets easier to lock onto. It gets a more stable lock. Just for fun, we can actually go down to this one down here. Lock onto that one instead. So you can easily switch between satellites if they're in very similar orbits. You just click on them. Yep. It gets blurred a little too much as it moves quickly. But again, you just right-click and left-click to redesignate the target. Pretty easy. Right-click, left-click. Left-click again. There we go. Just takes a little getting used to, but it's actually quite easy. Alright, let's go back up to the top one. So we got some interfering stars here. As you can see, it's going to want to lock onto those instead. Just wait for it to go past that field of stars and then get back on it. Easy. Yep. Formation satellites, not bad. That one's real bright, isn't it? I don't see a B object. I only see the A and the C, and that's all that was listed too, so I don't know if there ever was a NOS B for this 3-4, but there does seem to be only 2. Yeah, it does have a minimum magnitude, but it's dependent on the optics, right? It's dependent on the camera and the optics. If I were I'm using just a standard security camera wide-angle lens right now, a 55mm lens, very wide angle, compared to a guide scope, for example. If I were using my 80mm guide scope, well, for one thing, I would probably need a more precise alignment on the mount, but what are you doing there? I don't know what it was doing there, but yeah, if I were using an 80mm guide scope, I could get down to dimmer magnitudes, right? It's all about brightness in the image. It's really about brightness in the image, not about magnitude per se, although that drives the brightness in the image, of course. But if you use a guide scope, you're going to need to be more precise with your alignment. Make sure you get the satellite pretty close to the area that you're targeting with the scope. You know, just making sure you do a really good 2-star line, all that stuff. But it'll be able to see a dimmer satellite. Speaking of dimmer satellite, it's going to Earth's shadow right now, which is why it's saying unable to track this frame, unable to track this frame. Yeah, it's dimmed out as it's gone into Earth's shadow. But it tracked it, it's still there, but it's not able to track it. It's not going to lock at this point. But you can see it did a good job tracking it right up to shadow. That's not bad. I'm quite happy about that. So yeah, it's all about brightness in the image, but I'm quite happy with how dim it can get to. It is true that if you're looking at the image and you know what you're looking for, if you're looking for a very dim satellite, something that's, you know, maybe say like as dim as this star, I don't even know if you guys can see that in the stream, it's really, really dim. I can see that it's there, but there's no way the software is going to be able to lock onto it. In fact, I can just practice locking onto things. The scope's not going to move right now because I've turned off tracking. But you can see that it puts the green box around these stars that I click on. And you can see like this star here, it starts to have a little trouble with that. There's some dimmer stars up here that almost start to interfere because they're of similar brightness. Like if I try to put it on this one, there's too much junk there that's in that same brightness level. That confuses it. And if you try to go for a really, really dim star that I can just barely see in the image, it just can't lock onto it. There's too much noise. So there is a minimum brightness But it's pretty good. Like any of this stuff over here, like that guy right there, yeah, I can lock onto that, or that, or that, not a problem. Of course, that, easy. But yeah, there is a minimum brightness. Like that right there, that's probably about the edge of what it can do in the image. So now, what I can do, if you guys want to view the moon real quick, I'll go grab the scope itself and throw it on the moon. Let's see.
Solar system. Mars. Moon. Solar system.
Okay, let me slew to the moon. Just see how we're doing here for pointing accuracy. Where are you going? I guess you're going to go around the long way. Okay. And I'll switch it here. I'm gonna disconnect the
Object
scope.
acquired.
Oops. Yeah, no, you didn't. It aborted the slew because I disconnected the scope from the SatTraker.
Acquiring object.
So I'm gonna shut down SatTraker here and feed the view directly from the camera. Save configuration. Do that. And now. There we go. Woohoo! Well, there's the moon. Obviously.
Object acquired.
But of course, this is without the telescope. Oh, right. And also, as you can see, the camera's actually rotated. My software was de-rotating the image. That's the other thing. I've added some new features in there to be able to de-rotate images as needed. The software expects that the image will be oriented normal, right? So up is up, right is right, left is left, down is down. If it's not, you can do both mirroring, flipping it vertically, flipping it horizontally, and rotating it as needed to get it in that orientation. It makes it easier on you, it makes it easier on the software, it's just better to do it that way. So if you're looking through a guide scope, make sure you correct for any sort of mirroring that might be going on as a result of the camera's orientation and the optics themselves. Just so you guys can see. Oops. Turn off AGC. Yeah. As you can see, that's the moon. So I'm going to go get the telescope itself, and then we'll have a really good look at it. So, this is not my 8-inch Schmidt Cassegrain. This is the 4-inch Maxitow Cassegrain Next Star that I acquired for doing software testing here. Okay, so I'm going to have to take off the image of the moon now for a moment while I work on putting the telescope on. Telescope on. let's see, what time is it now? 11. So that's going to be what? That's going to be... So it's going to be 1:12 now, Universal Time.
Shooting down.
I'm going to disconnecting the software, the computer side from the telescope. Don't need it at this point for not satellite tracking. Oh, shoot. It doesn't fit in there as smooth as I would have liked. Alright, hang on. Oh. Nose piece I put on the camera is cruddy, apparently. I don't know. It didn't quite want to fit in the 1 1/4 inch receptacle for the telescope, so I'm going to a different nose piece. Okay, let's turn the camera on. See if we can find the moon now. I bumped the telescope all over the place doing that just now. Is going to be, I'm sure, significantly out of focus. Oh, it's already in there. Okay. So it's just a matter of focus. Hopefully I didn't screw up the tracking too much by bumping the telescope all over the place. Oh, that's nice. That's better. tangled hand controller here. Disconnect the USB cable. Better. Okay. Alright, now I've set the scope to track at the lunar rate. I need to program it to move a little slower. That's better. Also, just side note, I got lazy. I didn't put on the vibration pads, as you might have noticed. It's kind of shaky. For the wide field camera, of course, when doing satellite tracking, that didn't matter. But normally, if you're doing satellite tracking, you of course want to use anti-vibration pads. There's Mericrisium. Yeah, there's some dusk modes on the CCD. Sorry. Really crank up the in-camera sharpening. You can see how much crisper the craters look. That's the thing I love about this SDC 435. The onboard camera processing it does is really, really nice. Top notch. Hats off to Samsung. It just really makes that view pop. Yeah, it does look like cover glass, doesn't it? This is not publication worthy, right? Don't submit this to nature. But it is what it is. That's something I have a mind to do at some point when I have free time, which is never. When I'm not programming SatTraker or something else, is I'd like to make a program that lets me do dynamic real-time flat field subtraction of my video and output a video stream that can be used by OBT, or sorry, not OBT, OBS, broadcasting software, so that the video that you guys see is already pre-processed with a flat field so you don't get these dust motes. There's probably already software out there that does that. I know I hear people talk about auto-stackered or something like that all the time. I haven't really played with that in years. For some reason, I just always default to, well, I'll fix it myself. I could program something that does that, blah, 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 but the problem is I don't have time to implement every idea I come up with. Yeah, the shadows at the Terminator are really nice. Let me go back over there. Yeah, that's some really good looking stuff right there. I do prefer the moon when it's not quite so full, because you get really nice relief at those at the craters that are in shadow in the Terminator. OBS is nice for recording too. I mean, if you just want to do desktop recording, it can be useful for that as well. You can do offline recording with it. Yeah, why not? Go ahead and do this. I just don't want to forget to turn this off. Turn view reverse off. So I'm flipping the image in the camera so that it's back to true orientation. So next full moon is Friday at 12:40 a.m. So just after midnight after Thanksgiving, I guess, is when the next full moon will be here. Okay. Unfortunately, I guess I can't show you guys my cursor in the video. That's the disadvantage doing it this way. But I'm going to center up here. Try to. Sorry, I know I'm shaking the telescope real bad doing this. Okay, roughly in the center there. That crater right there, according to Sky Safari Pro, looks like it's... Is that the one? Looks like it. That's Pythagoras. I assume it's named after the same guy who came up with the Pythagorean theorem. Pythagoras. That's cool. I am no expert on lunar geography, by the way. But I'm just going to go through here on Sky Safari, try to give you guys a quick rundown of some stuff. So there's some shallow craters just north of Pythagoras, and you see that deep one beyond that, that's Carpenter Crater. Again, I really regret not having a pointer capability on this, but try to center it up there. And then closer to the edge, behind Carpenter Crater, I think that's Pascal. Yeah, that's Pascal behind Carpenter Crater, right at the edge, that deep dark one there. I'm trying to figure out which one, correlating from Skysfari again. I want to know which one has that nice bright ray system. There's one here that's got some nice bright ejecta rays. So in the bottom right, that real distinctive one that's kind of in the middle of some highlands that cut through the Maria there, you've got Plato Crater, that real circular one in the bottom right, circular flat looking one. And then north of that, trouble is I've got all these names cluttering up the view. It's actually hard to see which crater is which because there's so many names of craters in this area. Is that right? Yeah, that looks like that's right. So that one that's got the bright ray system kind of centered up now. Oops. No, come back. There we go. Looks like it's, and I'm probably going to pronounce this completely wrong, but Epigenes, or Pegin, there's probably a different way of pronouncing that. E-P-I-G-E-N-E-S. Almost looks like epigenetics to me, but I'm sure that's not how it's pronounced. I'm gonna rename it. It's officially Epigenetics Crater. I said it there. I said it. Biology fans everywhere rejoice. And no, that's not Tycho. That's not Tycho. Tycho. We'll go to Tycho. Let's see. I'll show you Tycho. Tycho's on the opposite side of the moon. Let's speed up the rate here. Motor rate. Let's try 6. It's a little faster. This way, this way. Tycho's here. There's Tycho. Yeah, Tycho's that big one in the middle. That's Tycho. You can see how big that one is and the big rays on it. Now that other one we were looking at the edge there, that was a totally different crater. I have to say, I'm really pleased with the quality of the image coming from this telescope. This is just a little 4-inch Maxitov. I didn't expect it to be this good. It's really quite good. I'm just coordinating right now with P&K Space Imaging channel. We're probably going to do a dual live stream where I track some satellite or satellites, and they'll reshare that on their channel. So we're just trying to work out the schedule right now for that. I'm on Skype with them at the moment. So give me a second while I look at what the schedule looks like, so we can put that on the calendar. Oh boy. Well, the weather forecast doesn't look like it's going to be so good then. I'd really like to get that one. Oh wait, is that tomorrow night? Oh, it sure is. Oh my goodness. Okay. Well, okay. This may not work for P&K Space Imaging, but I'm going to put it on my calendar anyway. Tomorrow night. Really? Let's change that to where I'll actually be tomorrow night for Thanksgiving. Looks like I might get a really good ISS pass. Yeah. 6:47 is when it hits 10 degrees. I'll be doggone. Hits a maximum altitude of 42 degrees. We will do it. Okay, so space station's making a really good pass tomorrow night, provided the weather cooperates, which I have no idea. I have no earthly idea if the weather's going to cooperate. Actually, let me see if I can get a forecast here real quick for where I'm going to be tomorrow. But I'll bring my 8-inch scope with me if that's the case. Oh, is Clear Sky Clock down? No. Okay, they're just slow tonight. Okay, it's not looking so good. Yeah, that forecast looks really bad. Well, that's unfortunate. I was going to say I was going to track the space station live through the main telescope tomorrow night, but the weather forecast is like 70% covered at that time. So, yeah, that's probably not going to work out so well. Sorry, gang. We'll get it next time. So, yeah. Nevertheless, when the weather cooperates and schedules work out, we'll be trying to coordinate a live stream both on this channel and on P&K Space Imaging. Or potentially Red's channel in P&K Space Imaging. We'll see. Yeah, there's gonna be a good one tomorrow night, Sam. I'm gonna try to watch it, but I'm not holding my breath. I think the weather's probably gonna muck things up, especially where I'm gonna be. I'm going back to visit family near our old stomping grounds tomorrow night. Lord Putnam is stressed out. Why are you stressed out? Don't be stressed out. It's Thanksgiving. Ah, Oumuamua. Yeah, that was a fun object when it was closer. Now, interestingly, I heard a rumor, and I haven't confirmed this myself, so I don't know if it's true, but I heard a rumor that theoretically it would be possible to catch up to Oumuamua eventually if you were to launch a sufficiently small, fast payload on top of a Falcon Heavy by 2021, which, at least on its face, sounds totally doable if you had sort of a rushed-together program to launch something after it. But in practice, I don't think that's going to happen. These things take too much time. But that would be really cool, I think, to have a quick response to this kind of thing and launch something to go chase it down. The problem, one of the problems with that idea, is that by the time you caught up to it, it'd be so far from the sun that you wouldn't be able to power the probe with solar energy. You would have to have a radioisotope thermal generator, basically a New Horizons style mission at least. And you can't exactly throw something like that together in 2 seconds. Not to mention the political pressure it would take to make that happen. But I'm kind of toying with the idea of doing a live stream based on that idea. If I can put something together Scott Manley style in Orbiter Spaceflight Simulator. I'm not so great at Kerbal Space Program, but I'm decent at Deep Space Rendezvous with the Orbiter Spaceflight Simulator. And there's a really good Falcon Heavy mod for that simulator. I've used it before on this channel. So I'm tempted to see if I could put together a simulated mission to Oumuamua using that kind of idea. Could be really challenging. Yeah, that would be really cool to catch up with it. Ah, but something that is really happening. Mars still up? It is. Why not? Let's have some fun. I have no idea what Mars is going to look like in this little scope. I don't think we'll see all that much detail. But then again, I've already been surprised by the moon. Let's see. Oops. Mars. Let me try to slew the scope to Mars, see what happens. I have a feeling the alignment is probably not going to be good enough. But we'll see. Maybe I can get it with the red dot finder. So, on, I believe, Monday, a NASA probe will be landing on Mars, InSight. Launched about 6 months ago, and is now approaching the red planet. Yeah. Close but no cigar on that salute. It's, make sure I don't miss it if I fly by it here. I don't see it. You guys scream at me in the chat if I fly by something bright. I don't know how you do that. Alright, hang on. Let me go back to the moon for a moment. Yeah, I think the probe landing is like 3 p.m. Eastern, thereabouts. So, during the day, we won't be able to view Mars. Well, not easily view Mars at that time. The moon here for a second, just calibrate the try to line that red dot finder a little better. Okay, that should be much closer now. Oops. Oops. I mean, this back to the moon. Synced to moon. And now let's go to Mars. Alright, let's try this again. Need to get a flip mirror. Well, actually, this next star comes with a flip mirror. I just don't have the attachment to put a camera on the back end properly. Need an adapter to adapt it to standard T-threads. There we are. Hooray! We found Mars. Back to sidereal rate tracking, and let's take that exposure on down. This is going to be terrible, but digital zoom for the win. Oh, that's awful. That's awful. I know it hurts. Okay, maybe not quite that much digital zoom. That's still a lot, but whatever. This is what you get with a 4-inch scope, right? A few pixels of Mars. But it's just cool to me to think that, you know, we've got a NASA probe approaching that right now, just a couple days away from landing. Who sliced up Mars? The interlacing on my camera sliced up Mars. So this is with my NextStar 4 SE. This is not with the 8-inch LX200. And it shows. Plus the alignment right now is not that good. I just synced it on the moon. I haven't done a proper 2-star align with the hand controller here. So I mean, I can always turn digital zoom back off, but maybe I should. There's 2 ways to skin this cat. So, turn digital zoom off. Yeah, now it looks really crisp, but also really, really tiny. So, I can cheat the other direction. Oh, yes. Yes, I can cheat the other direction by deliberately making this window way bigger than it should be to zoom in on it in OBS. Now it looks like you have your nose 2 inches from a VHS tape screen, CRT monitor, whatever. That's a whole different kind of bad, isn't it? Okay, that's a bad idea. That's a bad idea. Let's not do that. That's silly. There's a point at which you can only get so much performance out of a telescope this size, you know. It was never intended to provide images of Mars as clear as my 8-inch LX200. It just can't. There's a fundamental difference between a $400 telescope and a $3,000 telescope. Size matters in astronomy. So, I think I actually prefer the in-camera digital zoom to OBS digital zoom. But again, it's ugly. Let's go down to 2x zoom. Maybe that'll be a nice compromise. Yeah, okay, I think that's a decent compromise between pixelation and seeing what little detail is there. Oh, hey, Astro Live channel. This is with the Samsung SDC 435. Unfortunately, you missed all the good stuff. We already did the satellite tracking and looked at the moon. And now I'm just looking at Mars only because of the landing, InSight landing on Monday. So this is with my Nexstar 4 SE. This is not with the 8-inch LX200. I was mainly doing this earlier tonight to test the satellite tracking capability with the Nexstar mount to make sure that ASCOM functionality is working, and it does seem to be working, so that's good news. But the downside is now I'm outside with the 4-inch scope, not the 8-inch scope, so the quality of viewing Mars is not nearly as good for obvious reasons. I've been going here for, I don't know how many hours now, 2 hours, so I'll probably wrap up here shortly. Yeah, those guys who do their own mirror grinding for Dobsonians and such, that's always been impressive to me. I don't have the patience for that, to be honest. That's some dedication to grind your own 13-inch mirror, but very rewarding at the end. I know they do make commercial tracking solutions for large Dobsonian telescopes, like Argo Navis comes to mind, Servo Cats. These are some of the names I've heard bandied about by guys who have these big Dobsonians and have tracking systems on them. Maybe one day when I'm an old man and I'm retired and I've got nothing better to do with my time, I'll start grinding large Dobsonian mirrors in my free time and then put them on these tracking systems. Because to me, I mean, push 2 Dobsonians and everything that are just fully manual, they're great fun for visual observing, but I will always yearn for tracking capability, for go-to, for satellite tracking, all that stuff. And of course, you can track satellites by hand. Guys do that with Dobsonians all the time, but I've never been steady enough to really get satisfactory results out of that. I much prefer automatic tracking, obviously, which is why I've written my own software to do it. So if I were ever going to do that for a large Dobsonian, I'd have to know at the end that I'd be able to hook it up to my own software. And I think that might be possible with ASCOM drivers, with some of these commercial tracking solutions. I was talking to a guy on an astronomy forum who had one of these large Dobsonian telescopes, and he wants to test my software. So I'll have to see how it goes for him. If it works out for him, you know, maybe that's something I'll do one day. Not anytime soon. But, like I say, one day in the far-flung future when I'm retired. Alright, so that's Mars. And before we close it out, just for anyone who missed it earlier, we'll go back to the moon, because that's a much prettier target with this scope. Oh yeah. And just so I don't forget to do this later, I'm turning off vertical flipping. Because when I go back to putting this scope is normally does duty as my finder scope for tracking, especially with my 8-inch Schmidt-Cassegrain. And for that I have a C-mount lens on there. With normal orientation, I don't want to accidentally leave vertical reverse on. That'll screw up my tracking later, because that will come back and bite me. I'll forget to turn it off if I don't do it now. Back to the moon. The thing I do love about this scope, though, is it's very easy to set up. You can just pick the whole thing up and carry it outside. And it's very easy to align and get going. Though I haven't really done a proper alignment here, which is why... Oh, there's the moon. Which is why I had some difficulty finding Mars there at first, but... we're back on the moon now. That's good. I think I turned it off, but I wasn't really thinking about it. Just make sure digital zoom is off now. Yep, that's off. Okay, that's all good. Just want to take one last look at some of those beautiful craters there. It's really nice. Yeah, I was getting some of the landscape markings on Mars. You could see it there a little bit. I'm just so accustomed to how good my 8-inch scope does that it just bugs me when I'm looking at Mars through the 4-inch scope. Yeah, Astrolife channel. So check out my software. So you have an X-Star as well. yeah, it will work with Nexstar. I've tested it tonight. And if you don't want to go through the rigmarole of installing all the various Python dependencies in order to run the software, I will be coming out with an executable version shortly as well. I just want to do a couple more checks with it, particularly for polar alignment. It should work in both out-to-as and polar aligned configurations. You have to select which one you're on in the program, but I haven't field tested the, heck, I haven't tested at all the polar alignment option yet. So I just need to make sure that that's really, truly working before I release it. So I'm going to try to get that done this weekend. And if that's all good to go, I'm going to go ahead and get the executable version out there as well. So you'll be able to download that and run it straight away on your computer without having to install the dependencies. So that's something I'm setting up through an online store system, but the source code will continue to be available for free if you want to do it that way. It's just a lot more work to get it up and running from source code. But on the other end, I'll be needing to reimburse my costs for hosting it on a server. It's going to be it's not a huge download, but it's going to be about 250 megabyte download for the executable version. Whereas, of course, the source code is just text. It's just copy-paste text. But you have to go through, you basically do the download yourself from downloading all the dependencies from OpenCV to PyFM to all these other dependencies that it needs to run. Whereas the executable version, it'll come sort of prepackaged. Getting some haze and some cloud cover going over the moon there. Not too much, not too thick. Just a little bit. And yeah, we do have a full moon on Friday. Those are really good pictures of ISS for hand tracking it, but you'll be really happy with what you're able to get with my software doing automatic tracking. It's so much easier and so much better, because when you're automatically tracking it, for example, you can worry about other things. You can worry about trying to make sure it's perfectly focused and all of that while the tracking is actually happening. It's pretty much hands-off once you get it locked onto ISS. I don't know if you saw the video I did where I tracked it with the LX200. Pasted in the chat here. That 89-degree high pass, I mean, it tracked it right up to the zenith. And I've got an additional program I'm working on, which does rolling averages and basically automatically stacks in a 10-frame rolling average. And gets you some really high-quality footage. Yeah, I was chatting with P&K earlier. We're trying to coordinate a time to be able to do a simultaneous live show where basically I'm tracking the space station or something like it, maybe the Hubble Space Telescope, who knows, tracking something, preferably the space station, and then they can rebroadcast that as well on their channel. But we just have to hammer out a time to do that. If they have time, it seems like he might have some time this weekend. Thanks, Astro Live channel. Yeah, that was easily the best footage I've ever got of ISS, and it's entirely down to my software. That was totally thanks to that, thanks to the fact that I could focus on focusing ISS. You actually see me doing that quite obviously at the beginning of the video, where it's out of focus and then it comes back in. And I'm adjusting the focus there, just trying to make sure it's all tuned in. And I'm not even paying attention to what the software is doing. It's just doing its thing once I've locked onto it. And then I passed it through this additional program that I'm writing afterwards, where it did the post-processing automatically as well, basically aligning the frames to center up ISS and take out any movement of it from the recorded main camera image, and stacking the images as well to reduce the noise, and it produced a really crisp, clear image at certain points. No, I haven't tried on I can't pronounce it, Tianyong, Chinese space station yet. That's something I do want to try when I have the opportunity. Let me see, are there any opportunities coming up for that? And X-37, nope, haven't tried it on that either. Though that is a possibility this weekend. On the 24th in the morning. Now the weather's more likely to be better in the morning than in the evening. So that's a possibility. And what about Tianyong 2? Another morning possibility. Saturday morning. I think somebody's yelling at their dog. Looks like Saturday morning is a possibility for the Chinese space station. Let's see. Actually, I need to change that back to home. Let's try that again. Yeah, that's actually a really good possibility on Saturday morning. We have a really nice 75-degree high pass. That would be something to try for. Yeah, we'll give that a shot on Saturday morning. And then on Sunday morning, you can try for X-37. 77-degree high pass. Another good one. Okay, that's good. Some weekend plans for satellite tracking. Alright, folks. Am I on Discord? Sort of? I have a Discord thingy. I don't use it that often. I don't have like a Discord channel. Maybe I should set something like that up. I don't know how to set that up. I don't know. Do I have to like run my own server locally on my own computer, or what's the deal with that? I don't know. But I guess that's something I could look into. Sorry, neighbors making noise here. Hope that's not too loud in the background. I think the neighbors are receiving guests for Thanksgiving tomorrow. So, anyway, it's after 9 o'clock now, so I'm going to go ahead and wrap it up here. Thanks everybody for coming out and watching, and stay tuned. The next test will be equatorial verification, basically, of the equatorial features of my software for equatorial-based tracking of satellites. But I'll also try to do some tracking this weekend in the morning hours on Tiangyong. Let's see what we get. Hopefully something good. Happy Thanksgiving, everybody. Hope you guys have a good day tomorrow. And stay tuned for more. Thanks for watching. Clear skies, folks. Astronomy Live.